Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Think and Speak podcast, the show where we teach you modern English in a way that actually changes how you think and speak. Today, we're diving into a topic that can transform your English learning forever: thinking in English.
That's right, Emma. Most learners translate in their heads, from their native language into English. This slows you down, makes you hesitant, and sometimes even blocks you from speaking confidently. But when you start thinking directly in English, everything changes: your fluency, your vocabulary, and even your confidence.
Exactly. And the best part? Thinking in English isn't magic. It's a skill you can practice every day with simple methods. We'll show you practical techniques, useful phrases, grammar tips, and real-life examples that will help your brain switch into English mode naturally.
Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, comment below, and tell us, what is your biggest challenge when trying to think in English? We love hearing from you, and your answers help us create better lessons.
Let's get started and unlock the secret to thinking in English. It will completely change how you speak and understand English. Daniel, one challenge that I know many of our viewers face is that they often learn English vocabulary and grammar separately, but when it comes to speaking, their minds freeze. They spend time translating from their native language, which slows them down and makes them hesitant. Sometimes they know the words, but they can't string them together naturally. They get frustrated because they want to express complex ideas, tell stories, or even just describe their day, but it feels like the words don't flow. I've noticed this problem myself sometimes, especially when I'm trying to explain a new concept or give an opinion quickly. My question is, how can thinking directly in English, without translating, help learners overcome these obstacles? And what concrete strategies or daily exercises can they practice to train their brains to think in English? How can they make this English mindset a natural habit so that speaking becomes faster, more fluent, and more confident, even in situations where they might feel nervous or pressured?
That is a fantastic and very important question, Emma. The struggle you describe is extremely common among English learners because their brains are used to working in translation mode. When you translate, every thought has to pass through your native language filter before it reaches English. This process slows speech, creates awkward phrasing, and often leads to hesitation. Thinking directly in English bypasses this entirely. Your brain begins forming sentences and ideas in English from the start, which increases fluency, reduces mental friction, and makes speaking feel natural. One practical strategy is mental labeling and narration. For instance, when you are in your kitchen, try describing everything silently in English. I am opening the fridge. I see milk, eggs, and orange juice. I will make breakfast. This simple daily habit connects vocabulary with real-life situations and encourages full-sentence thinking rather than isolated words. Over time, your brain starts to anticipate English words automatically. Another method is daily mental storytelling. Pick any event, even small ones like your commute or lunch break, and narrate it in English mentally or aloud. For example, I took the bus this morning, and it was crowded. I had to stand next to a stranger, but I listened to music on my headphones. I was a bit nervous at first, but it became normal after a while. This practice reinforces vocabulary, grammar, and sentence structure simultaneously. Notice how the sentences naturally include past tense verbs, took, was crowded, listened, conjunctions, but, and adverbs, a bit, training your mind to produce correct English automatically. Grammar becomes intuitive through pattern recognition. Instead of memorizing rules, you absorb structures by thinking and speaking. Subject-verb agreement, tense consistency, word order, and connectors are internalized naturally. For example, sentences like, I was walking to the store when it started raining, use past continuous plus simple past, a structure that can be learned by constant mental practice instead of rote memorization. Chunking phrases is also essential. Think in blocks like, I'm looking forward to, or I can't wait to, rather than translating word by word. Idioms and modern expressions can be integrated naturally over time. For example, I'm beat after work, or I'm on the go today. Finally, consistency is key. Practice thinking in English for at least 15 to 30 minutes daily. Ask yourself questions in English and answer immediately. Examples: what will I eat for dinner? How was my day? What do I want to achieve this week? By continuously reinforcing this habit, Your mind gradually adopts an English-first thinking mode, which improves fluency, confidence, and even listening comprehension because your brain processes English patterns natively. The bottom line is this: thinking in English rewires your mental processes. Vocabulary, grammar, and idioms become integrated into your thought patterns, not separate pieces of knowledge. Over time, speaking becomes effortless, storytelling flows naturally, and expressing complex ideas becomes a joyful, stress-free process.
Daniel, here's something I've noticed with many learners, especially those preparing for interviews or social conversations. They know a lot of English words, and they can even understand complex grammar, but when it comes to speaking in real time, they struggle to sound fluent or confident. Sometimes they pause too much, repeat words, or feel anxious about making mistakes. I think part of this is because their mind isn't used to thinking in English. It's like the brain hasn't built a bridge from knowing vocabulary to speaking fluently. My question is, how exactly does thinking in English improve fluency and confidence? Are there specific exercises or habits that help learners speak naturally without hesitation? How can someone train their mind to think in full sentences, use idioms, and respond quickly in conversations so that they sound modern and authentic, rather than robotic or textbook-like? Can you explain, step by step, how a learner can move from translating to thinking directly in English in real-life situations, like chatting with friends or giving a presentation?
Emma, this is a crucial question, and the answer lies in understanding how the brain processes language. Fluency is not just about knowing words or grammar, it's about organizing thoughts in real time. When learners translate from their native language, the brain has to first construct the sentence in the original language, then find equivalent English words, adjust grammar, and finally speak. This creates hesitation, awkward phrasing, and anxiety. Thinking directly in English eliminates this multi-step process. The first step is practicing full-sentence thinking. Instead of memorizing words individually, learners should practice phrases and expressions as building blocks. For instance, "I'm looking forward to the weekend" is a chunk that conveys a complete idea. Other chunks include, "I can't believe it," "That's really interesting," or "I'm not sure, but I think." By thinking in chunks, the brain automatically produces connected, natural sentences instead of separate words. Next, mental role-playing is highly effective. Imagine yourself in a cafe, giving an opinion, or answering a question in a meeting. For example, "Excuse me, could I get a latte with almond milk?" Or, "In my opinion, renewable energy is essential for the future." Mentally simulate the conversation, then speak it aloud. This builds confidence because your brain begins associating English phrases with real-life situations. Idioms and modern expressions also improve authenticity. Phrases like "hit the books" for studying or "on the go" for being busy allow learners to sound natural. When thinking in English, the brain learns to pair meaning with context instead of relying on translation, which strengthens fluency. Grammar integration is important too. While thinking in English, pay attention to tense consistency, subject-verb agreement, and word order. For instance, "I was walking to the office when I saw my friend" combines past continuous plus simple past. By repeatedly forming these sentences mentally, grammar becomes instinctive rather than a rule to memorize. Finally, practice real-time Q&A sessions with yourself. Ask questions like, "What did I do today?" "What are my plans for tomorrow?" and answer immediately in English. Gradually, reduce pauses, integrate idioms, and form more complex sentences. Over time, the mind stops translating and thinks directly in English, improving fluency, confidence, and naturalness in conversations, presentations, and casual chats. Thinking in English is essentially training your brain for automatic language processing, turning hesitant learners into speakers who sound modern, confident, and truly fluent.
Daniel, I've noticed that even when learners think in English, grammar still seems to confuse them. They might know vocabulary and phrases, but when they try to construct more complex sentences or describe past events, they hesitate because they aren't sure about tenses, word order, or sentence connectors. Sometimes learners get stuck with questions like, "Should I use past perfect here?" Or just simple past. "Should I say I have been or I was?" It seems that grammar becomes a mental obstacle rather than a tool. My question is, how can thinking in English make grammar intuitive and automatic, rather than something to memorize? Are there modern strategies that allow learners to internalize sentence structures, verb forms, and connectors naturally? How can they practice thinking in English while also mastering grammar so that their speech is not only fluent but also correct, natural, and modern? Can you give concrete examples, including how learners can use everyday situations to reinforce grammar patterns without boring drills?
Emma, this is one of the most important points in modern language learning. Grammar often feels like a set of rules, but when learners think in English, grammar becomes a natural pattern of thought rather than a memorized formula. This is because your brain begins constructing sentences based on meaning, context, and experience rather than translating rules from your native language. For example, consider the difference between past simple and present perfect. Instead of asking, "Which tense do I use?" learners can think, "I am forming my idea in English." For instance, "I visited Paris last year," past simple for a specific time, versus "I have visited Paris 3 times," present perfect for experiences without a specified time. By mentally narrating events and repeating these naturally, learners internalize the patterns. One effective strategy is sentence expansion. Start with a simple sentence, "I read a book." Then expand using connectors, "I read a book yesterday, and it was really inspiring because it talked about modern technology." This exercise uses past simple, adjectives, and the connector because giving structure while sounding natural. Repeating this mentally every day trains the brain to automatically build complex sentences without thinking about the rules consciously. Pattern practice is also key. For example, combining past continuous plus simple past, "I was walking to the office when I saw my friend." Repeating mental examples like this builds automaticity in tense usage. Another approach is question-answer loops. Ask yourself, "What did I do today?" Then answer in full sentences aloud. Include modifiers, prepositions, and conjunctions. "I met my friend at the cafe, and we talked about our weekend plans." Grammar also becomes intuitive when paired with idiomatic expressions and everyday language. Phrases like "keep an eye on," "hit the nail on the head," or "in the long run" require correct sentence placement, so using them in mental narration integrates grammar naturally. Finally, think in English through storytelling. Describe your day, narrate news articles, or imagine hypothetical scenarios. By repeatedly forming thoughts in English, your brain learns to apply grammar automatically. Over time, tense usage, connectors, and sentence structure flow naturally, making speech fluent, correct, and modern. Grammar is no longer a set of rules, it becomes an invisible guide that shapes thoughts seamlessly in English.
Daniel, even learners who speak English fluently sometimes sound textbook-like or unnatural. They know grammar and vocabulary, but their sentences feel rigid or formal, and they struggle to use idioms, slang, or modern expressions naturally. Many learners want to sound more authentic, like a native speaker, but they're afraid of making mistakes or using expressions incorrectly. My question is, how can thinking in English help learners use idioms, phrasal verbs, and modern expressions correctly without hesitation? Are there techniques to internalize these expressions so they flow naturally in conversation rather than being memorized? Can you also explain how learners can incorporate both correct grammar and casual, modern phrases together so their English is fluent, authentic, and expressive? How can they practice this at home or mentally so that their brain starts automatically pairing meaning, context, and expression while speaking?
Excellent question, Emma. Authentic English isn't just about knowing words or grammar, it's about rhythm, tone, and context. Thinking in English plays a huge role because it trains your brain to associate meaning directly with the language, rather than translating. This allows idioms, phrasal verbs, and modern expressions to become automatic in speech. For example, instead of saying, "I am very tired," a native speaker might say, "I'm beat," or "I'm wiped out." The meaning is immediate. When learners think in English, their brain naturally retrieves these phrases because it links context plus emotion plus vocabulary, not a translation from the native language. A practical strategy is mental immersion with idioms. During your day, narrate situations using natural expressions. "I have a lot on my plate today, let's play it by ear," or "I'm feeling under the weather." Start with phrases that are grammatically simple but expressive. Gradually combine them with complex structures. "I was feeling under the weather yesterday, but I pushed through and finished my work." Another technique is collocation practice words that naturally go together. For example, "make a decision," "take a break," or "catch a cold." Mental repetition of these combinations creates a mental database of correct usage, so your speech sounds smooth and native-like. Grammar integration is essential. Even when using idioms, ensure correct tense, word order, and agreement. I've hit the books all week, so I'm exhausted. Here, present perfect plus phrasal verb plus adjective works together naturally. Role-playing mentally also helps. Imagine conversations with friends, colleagues, or customers. Think, hey, I'm swamped today. Can we meet tomorrow? This practice trains your brain to combine grammar, idioms, and casual phrases seamlessly. Finally, exposure to modern English media podcasts, vlogs, or interviews strengthens natural usage. Listen, pause, and mentally repeat phrases in context. Over time, your brain internalizes patterns, and speaking naturally becomes instinctive. In short, thinking in English helps learners link meaning, grammar, and expression. Idioms and modern phrases no longer feel like memorized rules, they become tools that allow speech to flow naturally, confidently, and authentically.
Daniel, here's something I often see. Learners know grammar, vocabulary, and even some idioms, but when they try to speak, they hesitate, say, or pause too long. It's like their brain is slow to form sentences, even though they know what they want to say. I've heard that thinking in English can speed up sentence formation and reduce hesitation, but I wonder exactly how it works. How can learners train their minds to think quickly in English, so that words and sentences flow naturally, without stopping to translate or correct themselves? Are there exercises that can help them form full sentences instantly, use idioms and connectors, and speak fluently even under pressure, like in meetings, interviews, or casual conversations? How can they turn thinking in English into a habit so that fluency becomes automatic and pauses disappear over time?
Emma, hesitation is one of the biggest barriers to confident English speaking. The root cause is usually overthinking or translation, where the brain pauses to find words, check grammar, or mentally translate. Thinking directly in English removes these bottlenecks. Your mind starts producing sentences automatically because it's trained to form thoughts in English, not your native language. One effective method is mental visualization with narration. Imagine situations, ordering coffee, explaining your day, or giving an opinion. Narrate silently or aloud in English. I'm waiting for my coffee. The barista is friendly. I hope they don't forget my almond milk. This combines grammar, vocabulary, connectors, and idioms while building speed. Another key strategy is sentence starters and filler phrases. Phrases like, let me think, well, I believe, or I'm not sure, but provide structure, allowing your brain extra time without awkward silence. They are common in modern conversations and reduce the urge to pause or overthink. Rapid Q&A practice is excellent for speed. Ask yourself questions. What did I do today? What's my plan for tomorrow? Immediately answer in full sentences, including connectors and adverbs. I went to the gym in the morning, and then I met a friend for lunch. It was really fun. Repeating this daily builds mental agility. Grammar and idioms integrate naturally over time. For instance, I was running late, but I made it on time, combines past continuous plus past simple, while I was wiped out after the meeting adds an idiomatic expression. Thinking in English teaches your brain to combine structure and expression automatically. Finally, shadowing media accelerates fluency. Listen to podcasts, repeat sentences aloud, and try to match pace and intonation. Over time, your brain predicts sentence endings, idioms, and connectors, so words flow naturally even under pressure. By practicing daily, building mental loops, and thinking in full sentences with idioms and connectors, hesitation disappears. Speaking becomes automatic, confident, and fluent because the mind no longer translates, it thinks and expresses directly in English.
Daniel, I've noticed that learners often focus on speaking but forget that thinking in English can also improve listening and comprehension. Many people struggle to understand native speakers because they are still translating in their heads, word by word. They may know the words individually, but when they hear sentences at normal speed, they feel lost or miss the meaning entirely. My question is, how exactly does thinking in English improve listening skills? Are there strategies that learners can use to train their brains to process English directly so they can understand native speakers more quickly and naturally? How can they combine thinking in English with active listening, mental summarization, and prediction of sentences so that comprehension becomes automatic? Can you give practical examples for everyday situations like podcasts, conversations, or news listening, where thinking in English makes understanding faster and more confident?
Emma, this is an excellent point because many learners underestimate how much thinking in English enhances listening comprehension. Listening fluency is not only about hearing words, it's about processing meaning instantly, which is impossible if you are still translating mentally. When learners think in English, they form a mental framework for understanding sentences directly. This allows comprehension to happen in real time. One strategy is mental imagery with phrases. For example, when someone says, "I'm feeling under the weather today," instead of translating, imagine the person looking tired or sick. Your brain links context and meaning directly with the English phrase. This speeds up understanding because you no longer rely on a dictionary in your head. Another technique is predictive listening. While listening to a conversation, mentally anticipate what might come next. If you hear, "I'm going to the," you might predict gym or store, depending on context. Predictive thinking trains your brain to process language naturally, improving both speed and comprehension. Chunking phrases also helps. Native speakers rarely speak word by word. They use chunks like "as far as I know," "in a nutshell," or "on the other hand." When you mentally practice these chunks in thinking exercises, your brain recognizes them instantly when listening, bypassing translation. Grammar awareness improves comprehension too. Knowing tenses, connectors, and modal verbs allows you to anticipate sentence meaning. For instance, "if I had studied harder, I would have passed the exam" uses past perfect plus conditional. Recognizing this pattern quickly improves understanding. Finally, shadowing and summarization are powerful. Listen to a short podcast or news clip, then summarize it mentally in English. The speaker discussed climate change. They explained the new policies and suggested solutions. This combines active listening, comprehension, and English thinking simultaneously. By practicing thinking in English during listening, learners train their brain to understand context, meaning, and nuance automatically. This not only makes comprehension faster, but also allows them to respond confidently, even in fast conversations or complex discussions. Over time, listening becomes intuitive, and the mind processes English naturally without translation delays.
Daniel, finally, many learners know grammar, vocabulary, and idioms, but they struggle to adapt to modern expressions, slang, and cultural context in English. Social media, movies, and conversations often include phrases that aren't taught in textbooks, like "I'm shook" or "that's lit." Learners want to sound current and natural, but they feel hesitant because slang changes quickly, and they don't know when it's appropriate. My question is, how can thinking in English help learners absorb modern expressions, slang, and cultural nuances naturally? Are there mental exercises that make the brain familiar with these contemporary forms without overthinking or sounding forced? How can learners combine correctness, fluency, and modern usage so that they can understand and speak like a native in casual, social, or professional contexts? Can you explain concrete strategies and examples that make learning slang and culture enjoyable and automatic?
Emma, this is a fantastic and very practical question. Modern expressions, slang, and cultural context are often what separate textbook English from real-life, authentic English. Thinking in English is the perfect tool because it trains the brain to internalize language patterns directly rather than rely on translation or formal rules. For example, consider the slang "I'm shook," meaning "I'm surprised or shocked," or "that's lit," meaning "that's amazing or exciting." If a learner translates these literally, they may misunderstand or misapply them. But if you think in English regularly, your brain learns to associate meaning with context. When you read or hear "I'm shook," you automatically understand it refers to strong emotion, not physical shaking. A powerful strategy is mental role-playing in social scenarios. Imagine texting a friend, "That concert was lit. I'm shook by the finale." Or reacting to a story, "No way. I'm totally shook." By rehearsing casual conversation mentally, learners embed modern expressions naturally. Over time, the brain retrieves them automatically, just like any other English phrase. Another method is contextual immersion. Watch short clips, social media videos, or podcasts, and mentally summarize or repeat sentences in your own words using contemporary language. The movie was epic, the ending had me shook. This combines comprehension, cultural awareness, and fluent expression. Grammar and slang integration is also important. Even informal expressions follow English patterns. For example, "I've been swamped lately," present perfect plus idiomatic phrase, or "he's going to crush it tomorrow," future intention plus phrasal verb. Thinking in English allows learners to combine correctness with modern usage seamlessly. Finally, make it a daily habit. Dedicate a few minutes to thinking in English using slang, idioms, and cultural phrases in realistic contexts. Over time, your mind no longer pauses, analyzes, or translates. English becomes automatic. You'll start understanding social media, movies, and conversations instantly, and your own speech will sound fluent, modern, and natural. Thinking in English turns slang and cultural nuances from hard to learn into intuitive tools. Learners speak confidently, fluently, and in a way that feels authentic in any modern English environment.